Hamburg, Germany. Those men are Mohammed Atta, who we will show you in a photograph here, and his friend Marwan al-Sheri. Both held United Arab Emirate passports, but it's not clear if they are actually citizens of that country. We know, for example, that Atta had an Egyptian driver's license. In Hamburg, Germany, German federal police launched an extensive search of an apartment shared by Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Sheri in February of this year. During an additional search of another apartment that may have been connected with the two men, a woman was taken away for questioning. During the night, a total of 8 apartments were searched by German police. Now, back across the Atlantic in Pompano Beach, Florida, FBI agents have converged or did converge on a small rental car company called Warwick's. Records show that Atta rented an automobile at that location between August 15th and August 29th. And during that time, he put a remarkable 3,000 miles on that car, according to the contracts. The FBI also came here, a company called Flight Sim in Opelika, Florida. The owner said 3 men, Atta among them, paid cash for 6 hours of flight instruction on a Boeing 727 simulator. Their instructor, Henry George, said, however, they weren't too interested in takeoffs and landings.
What they received was a familiarization flight more than any kind of formal instruction. I don't have any records of exactly what we did, but what my memory what I can recollect from my memory is that we mostly did turns in a couple of approaches. I don't think we did any more than that. It was, like I said, it was not a structure. It wasn't our typical or normal lesson plan.
CNN correspondent John Zarrella conducted the interview with Mr. George. You'll see more of that interview later today. Agents knocked on hundreds of doors today, and other agents from other countries did the same in coordination, trying to find these terrorists. But before it's all over, they're going to be knocking on tens of thousands of doors. Joey?
CNN's Mike Boettcher for us following the investigation. Other developments in the investigation today. We told you just a short time ago that the flight data recorder, one of those so-called black boxes from the Pennsylvania crash site, has now been located. CNN's David Mattingly is on the scene now in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the investigation there is underway. David, what do you know?
Joy, as you said just a short time ago, the FBI finally revealing they have recovered the flight data recorder, the first of 2 critical pieces of evidence in this investigation, the other being the cockpit voice recorder. Now, that device is being taken from here. It was found in the impact crater. It's being taken from here to Washington, D.C. for further examination. Now, this news comes just hours after learning today that there are 2 other areas where debris has been found, some as far away as 8 miles in the town of New Baltimore, and another site a couple of miles away from here in the town called Indian Lake. Small pieces of material scattered 8 miles away, but investigators say they have determined that it's completely consistent with the kind of weather patterns and the type of impact that we have here. Again, giving you some idea of just how powerful the impact was when this jet crashed here. Back to you in Atlanta.
CNN's David Mattingly for us out at Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Now we continue, particularly looking into the search and rescue efforts. Here's Bill.
Joey, you look at some of these numbers coming out of New York City today, and they're just astounding and staggering. The numbers we're getting: 6,000 tons of debris removed so far. That's just the beginning, and basically the tip of the iceberg that we're seeing in southern Manhattan. We're also starting to see the struggle, the human struggle, in so many ways played out in Manhattan. Elizabeth Cohen on the streets there outside the Armory, where you're hearing the worst of it, are you not, Elizabeth?
Oh, definitely hearing the worst of it, Bill. There are hundreds of families standing in line behind me trying to get word from the authorities about where their loved ones are. The authorities are asking them for any kind of identifying information. They're asking them for dental records. They're asking them for blood samples from close relatives so that DNA can be matched. And people are standing in line around the corner and have been here, hundreds of them, all day. I have 2 people with me right here. Naomi Konovich is looking for her brother-in-law, Andrew Zucker. Your brother-in-law called your sister Tuesday morning.
Andrew called Erica right after the first plane crashed and said, "I'm okay, I'll call you back." Hung up the phone, and we haven't heard from him. The only thing we heard were reports that he had evacuated his office, told everyone to leave. The last thing we heard was from his secretary, who said that he was on the 70-something floor on his way down the stairs. But he's a very good soul, and we're just afraid that he might have gone back to try to help more people once they announced the building was secure.
And we did a story with you yesterday. You've been hospital after hospital searching. Yesterday I was at NYU and Bellevue and down by St. Vincent's, passing out pictures, talking to people, finding out lists, calling hospitals. My sister, my parents, and friends are calling hospitals, personally going to hospitals. I came down this morning, I walked from 50th, I took the subway to 14th, I walked to St. Vincent's, I checked their list, I walked all across World Trade Center and up West Street, giving out flyers to people going down to the World Trade Center to Ground Zero. Today I came up to the Armory and I filed a report with them. I handed in his dental records, his fingerprints, all the information they wanted, hair follicles, gave them pictures, and we're just hoping that someone heard or saw something or can give us some confirmation of where he is, some real valid confirmation that's been verified. You've had some problems with some internet sites where one site said he was okay. But
there are these NewYork.com survivors, there's NewYorkCity.com. They have lots of websites that have people on that are saying they're okay. I can go on and put anyone's name in that I want, and it's false. These records are not verified. They're giving out a phone number for the Greater New York Hospital Association that's putting up a verified website of people that they know the status of and where they are. And that's the only thing I think that's verified.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm also here with First Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez, who is looking for his sister, Lisa King. What is the last your family has heard from her?
On the day of the attack, Lisa had called her husband Jim and said that she was all right, and I guess she called back, or she on the same phone call, she was hysterically crying, and she said that they're finally getting us out of here, and so I guess she started on her way, but again, we don't know if she took the stairs down, the elevator. We don't know. She was in Tower 2 on the 89th floor, and again, when I got over there, I couldn't do anything. The building just started collapsing, so I had to run away. And yesterday, we got a glint of hope that maybe someone found her. But what it was a piece of ID, and we got a phone call about 4 times removed from the actual person that called, and said that they found an ID that had her name and address on it, but the person that they pulled out was an unconscious female. So other than that, we don't really know. Just that the person was there and they were unconscious. It could be her, it could not be her. We don't really know, and we're trying to verify that. It went down all over the place yesterday, to Ground Zero, to the triage centers, to the morgue center. Nobody's really had any luck in keeping a good list going of who is who and where they went, and there's quite a good possibility that she went to New Jersey, but we don't know. We don't know if she's conscious. We don't even know if that was her. We're just trying.
Lieutenant, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
In addition to looking for his own sister, Lieutenant Rodriguez and his platoon are helping with some of the efforts here. He was in the Armory today helping other families look for their lost loved ones. And there's just story after story, thousands of stories like this here at the Armory here in Manhattan.
They just keep on coming, unfortunately. Elizabeth Cohen there at the Armory. While we have you here, a quick clarification I want to make. You were talking with David Mattingly in Western Pennsylvania. We were told in the past hour, many people have thought there might have been military action,
right,
U.S. military action taken against that United Airlines flight, but the FBI investigator on the scene says that is not the case.
He was very quick to jump in at the beginning of his press conference.
It was either misspoken or misquoted, whatever the case may be. You want to clarify that.
All right, we've talked about the investigation. We've talked about the very human concern for loved ones who are lost right now. And we want to move on to what is likely to become the response of the United States.
Back to Judy Woodruff in Washington. Judy?
That's right, Bill. Here in Washington, much of the focus at the Pentagon right now on the outside is the recovery efforts. They say they've all but given up hope for any survivors there, but the work very much proceeding to pull remains that they can find, and there's been no slowdown in that effort. But on the inside of that building, which is of course the military and defense center for the United States, some tough talk about what are the options now given this terrible attack on the United States. CNN's military affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre. Jamie, we are hearing the kind of language out of the Pentagon we haven't heard before.
Yeah, very strong words indicating that there will be military action taken against the foe, which right now is simply called terrorism. They haven't really put a name to it, even though Secretary of State Colin Powell today did say Osama bin Laden the prime suspect in this event. Some of that tough talk coming from Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz, who today said that the U.S. military response, the U.S. response would be a sustained military campaign, even though he wouldn't say what U.S. strikes might target or discuss any specific military options.
I think one thing is clear is that you don't do it with just a single military strike, no matter how dramatic. You don't do it with just military forces alone. You do it with the full resources of the U.S. government. It will be a campaign, not a single action. And we're going to keep after these people and the people who support them until this stops.
Wolfowitz also praised the strong bipartisan support the administration has gotten. Today, this afternoon, a congressional delegation made up of some of the top leaders, both from both sides of both houses of Congress and both parties in Congress, toured some of the wreckage at the Pentagon. Wolfowitz said that the support for the $20 billion in additional funding that President Bush has asked for to fight terrorism is very welcome. He said some of that money, although he didn't say how much, would go to increase the readiness and the ability of U.S. military forces. Some might go, he said, to pay for some of the combat air patrols that have been over major U.S. cities over the last couple of days. Judy?
Jamie, any discussion there at the Pentagon about the fact that as they talk publicly, obviously where they're not telling us the details of what they're thinking, but as they talk publicly about striking back at those responsible for what happened and those who might be planning something else against the United States, this every day that goes by gives these people, whoever they are, whether it's Osama bin Laden and his network or others, it gives them time to scatter and to hide, in effect.
Well, it's going to be, and everybody in the administration has made this point, that whatever they do is going to have to be a long, sustained campaign. It's not going to be a quick strike or a quick fix. The instinct, the impulse is to want to react immediately and take a proactive stance against terrorism. But in these cases, prudence often dictates a more measured response, a time to accumulate intelligence and be able to make a response that takes into account not just the first strike, but what comes in the days after that. What's the follow-up? What will the fallout be? So you need to have a really carefully thought out and measured campaign if you're going to embark on military action. This is really a case, Pentagon officials say, where you don't want to shoot from the hip.
And Jamie, not something where the president necessarily is going to need congressional support. Is that right?
I think, first of all, the president has an enormous congressional support for whatever military action he decides to take. It's not something that you would need to have a vote in Congress for. In all likelihood, if military action comes, it's something that we'll find out after it's taken place.
All right, Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. We want to show you some pictures now of one of the first aircraft traveling here out of the Washington area. This is Dulles Airport. This is the site of one of those fateful flights that the flight that ended up going into the Pentagon left from on Tuesday morning. This, we're told, is an airline, and I can't read the name of it. It looks like ANA on the tail. This is one of the very first airplanes to be permitted to take off again from this airport in the Virginia suburbs outside of Washington, D.C. Restrictions just being lifted by the Federal Aviation Administration, but restrictions on travel being imposed in a way that people are going to be very, it's just going to be much more difficult to travel, many more security measures in place.